Welcome to this LinkedIn Live broadcast where I discuss winning bids in the utilities sector. So I'm going to be talking today about winning bids for retail utility services. I'm going to be talking about gas, electricity, water, retail services. I'm not going to discuss telecoms. That'll be the subject of a separate LinkedIn Live broadcast. I'm also not going to be discussing winning bids to the utility sector, where perhaps you're bidding on some large infrastructure supplies, ancillary services, etc. You're bidding to be a supplier to the utility sector. Again, I can cover that in a separate LinkedIn Live broadcast. But today what I'm going to be talking about is the retail supply of electricity, gas and water. Although I'm going to be talking about this from a public sector bidding perspective, that's bidding to the public sector, a lot of what I'm going to be saying can equally apply to bidding to the industrial and commercial sector as well. Bidding to private sector proposals might be perhaps bidding to large chains, multi-site businesses who are looking for a single supplier of, it might be energy like gas and electric, or water, a single supplier, a single biller, as it were, across the UK, or as much of it as possible. So that's what I'll focus on today. First of all, it's always good to take a look at the actual opportunity. So is it a winner takes all type of tender, or is it the opportunity to get onto a framework? And if it's on a framework, how are the call-offs going to be made? How much work is going to come through that framework? What happened if the framework has been in existence already? How much spend has there been through the framework, and where did that spend go? And also, how much are you going to have to be involved as a retailer in promoting the framework and encouraging customers to go through the framework? So you want to evaluate all these things as to whether this is a realistic opportunity that you are going to get business from, or because you're on it, it may perhaps open some doors to some other types of business. You want to also look at, obviously, the evaluation criteria as well. Is it weighted more towards price and quality, as can quite often be the case? What percentage is the quality? The higher the percentage of the quality, obviously the more chance that a quality service is going to do well here. The higher percentage that's going on price, then you can see that they are looking very much for a price solution here, a cheaper value solution. The public sector will often talk about the meat, most economically advantageous tender, that being based on a mixture of price and quality, but they will often give the highest price marks to the lowest price, whereas the highest scoring quality bid may not necessarily get maximum quality score. So price ends up having a disproportionate effect on the ultimate outcome. This is where your relationship people, your business development people, the people that are on the ground, will be able to provide you with some useful intelligence on what the client here is actually looking for. You want to understand as well how work is going to flow through it. So is it going to be, as I mentioned, winner takes all? Is it going to be a framework? Are there many bids, many competitions that are going to come from it? How are these going to be evaluated? Is it price? Is it quality? Is it a mixture of both? Is there e-auctions going to be taking place within the bid process as well? So that's where you submit a price as part of your bid process, but then you would need to usually be prepared to lower your price through the e-auction to actually be awarded the contract. So that's quite a difficult one because you've got to price yourself at a competitive enough price to actually make it through to the final stages, to the final e-auction stage, but you've got to leave yourself a bit of room if you need to reduce the price further to actually win. And vital there that you've got a sort of floor price that you're not prepared to go below, and be resolute on that, because otherwise, if you go through your floor price, then you're inevitably winning work at very low margins, maybe even negative margins, and that will have an impact on your business. It's good as well to take a look at the terms and conditions, the contractuals here as well. You want to be very clear on what it is you're having to sign up to. Is the client going to use your terms and conditions? That would be quite a good outcome. But in many cases, the client will want you to use their terms and conditions, and you need to be, get these examined properly, get legal assistance where necessary as well, and also use the clarification window, because usually in the public sector, you've only got the clarification period, which is during the bid process and before you submit your bid, to actually raise any clarifications that you've got around the terms and conditions. There may not be a lot of scope to vary them, but if you do want them varied in some way, you'd want to show an understanding of why perhaps the public sector organisation wanted that particular contractual clause or requirement, and you would want to be able to propose a suitable alternative. On the subject of clarifications, I'd also recommend that you build a straw person out of the pricing matrix, and you get into that as quickly as possible and identify if there are any anomalies within the pricing matrix, if it could be likely to throw up some kind of a result that wouldn't be fair. You want to make sure that it is actually fully transparent and that you understand how the scoring is actually awarded here. And again, use the clarification question window to ask questions designed at eliciting that information and ensuring a level playing field for all bidders. We often say to bidders, look, if somebody wanted to bid this at the lowest possible price, what would they be perhaps looking to leave out? What would they be looking to substitute with cheaper? What would they be looking to perhaps hope wouldn't get noticed? Or what would they be looking to charge extra for? And then very actively flush a lot of that out through the clarification process. So as the buyer gives utmost clarity, and then you've got this level playing field, everybody's in possession of similar information, and you are then going to be pricing accordingly. And that makes a loss on price much less likely, and it puts the attention on the quality technical side. Just a word on qualifications as well. The bid will be first of all looked at to see whether you pass the supplier qualification stage. So there's basic things in there. You've got to have obviously have a license to operate in the market that you're bidding in, but there'll be lots of other aspects of qualification. Usually you'll need to have reference contracts, and if they can be as similar to what you're bidding for as possible, then that is helpful. So if you're looking at bidding, multi-site, across the UK, then you would want to have an example of that where possible. So making your case studies, your references, as matching them as close to this opportunity as possible. Also, in some cases, you're going to need to have your references being able to actually speak to your competence as well. They may be asked to complete a form, or there may be some form of telephone interview with them. So you need to make sure that you have got people sufficiently warmed up that they understand the opportunity, but they also understand that if you're successful, their service is not going to suffer either, because that could be a concern that existing clients have. Things like ISO accreditations are important as well, and they can obviously save you a lot of hassle in the bid process if you can evidence that you've got the appropriate ISO qualifications. Increasingly, what's being looked for in the public sector, it's 9001 for quality management, it's 14001 environmental management, which is very important in energy, utilities sort of markets. 45,001 covers your workplace health and safety management, and 27,001 is information security management. And it'll become harder and harder to be awarded a public sector contract without having appropriate information security arrangements in place. Even if you've not yet got ISO 27001, you should have Cyber Essentials Plus is another one, Cyber Essentials Plus. You definitely want to have these for working with public sector bodies. You're going to be dealing with information that in some cases could be sensitive. And of course, the public sector are risk averse and do not want data breaches to be taking place. So that's us worked our way through on this bid. We've worked our way through the qualification stage. We've worked our way through the pricing matrix. We have looked at the commercials and contractuals. Now we're going to look at the technical or quality aspects where the bid, will have a technical quality score. So I mentioned already that value for money is being looked for. The public sector obviously need to make savings, so they will be looking at bidders if they can evidence that they can be better than what they've got already, faster, and certainly in terms of speed of service, speed of response, especially timely billing, and safer, and that a focus on health and safety, especially where there's any kind of involvement directly with energy services, water, etc., then health and safety obviously would be the #1 priority. And at this time in COVID-19, in the COVID-19 era, you would also be giving thought to how your workers are able to be employed safely, observing appropriate social distancing, that they've got the necessary PPE for the job, and that you've got contingencies in place should there be further lockdowns, or should there be perhaps a number of members of staff going off sick concurrently. So security of service is very important, that the service is able to continue to be delivered. If I was asked what's the most important thing on retail energy, utilities, water contracts, I would say that brilliant billing is vital, really. We've all heard, and many of us may have experienced cases of billing that has been less than brilliant, perhaps lots of invoices being reissued, all arriving at the same time. I once got 2 years of invoices arriving through my door at the same time. That obviously is far, far less than ideal, particularly with the public sector are working to annual budgets. So the billing has to be done in a timely manner. It's got to be accurate as well, though. So you've got to evidence how you achieve that. You should be collecting KPI type data from the contracts that you hold. Even if you're not asked for this by the clients, it's a good discipline to actually keep KPI data on all contracts. You can present it to your clients, particularly where it is favourable for you, and it's also data that will be very helpful when you're putting bids together. It's good to think about the sustainability objectives as well, because when we're talking about energy and water, we're talking about, the net zero carbon agenda as well. So showing how this, that you can evidence efficiency savings. You want to also be working together with your client to effect behavioural change through behavioural change programs. And again, having evidence of where you've done this successfully, and not just on things that are low-hanging fruit, but that you've perhaps tackled some of the things that are almost in the too difficult box, and that you've actually managed to tackle some of these things and deliver measurable improvements. It's vital that anything that you're evidencing, is backed up properly. It's capable of actually being measured and verified as well. So if you're going to be taking on a contract, you want to think about the ease of switching. How easy is that going to be? You also want to think about your implementation and mobilization. Also important is your relationship with the wholesalers as well. Can you evidence that you've got good relationships with the wholesalers? If you're imagining that you were perhaps going to be delivering an energy or water contract across most of the UK, then you're going to have to be in contact with quite a lot of different wholesalers. So what is the strength of your relationship there? Because often it'll be the wholesaler who can hold the key to sorting out a problem. On the subject of problems, complaints, escalation processes are very important as well, as is the opportunity for clients to look at their own data. So if we went back a few years ago, the self-serve portal where the client could look at their information any time of the day or night and see where individual cases were, etc., and track progress. A few years ago, that was fairly new, fairly groundbreaking. It isn't anymore. It's almost viewed as normal, and it is typically expected of bidders to have self-service portal arrangements in place with good integrations with clients' own systems. So you want to be giving them in your bid the necessary assurance that they will need, that moving to a new supplier is not going to cause them massive headaches. It's something where you can effect a smooth transition. And again, the more and the better the case studies you have for this, the better, because nothing's going to give more confidence than seeing that you've already done it before and that the clients that you've done it for are actually happy, or even better, delighted with the services that you have. In terms of your call centre arrangements, these are something that is going to form quite a big part of your bid as well. So the working conditions, particularly in this COVID era, are going to be very important, but also the engagement of staff, the involvement of them, that they can often have some very good ideas, and how these ideas get fed in lead to service improvements. So these are things that you need to be thinking about, as well as things like fair working practices, that that you've got an appropriate understanding of equality, diversity, inclusion, that there's flexible hours arrangements in place as well, and important that any of these arrangements are not to the detriment of customers. So you've got to resource things properly as well. Something else that energy and water clients are going to look for is ancillary services, particularly where it comes around energy savings. How are these going to be achieved? How are water efficiency savings going to be achieved? Often it's going to be through perhaps doing some work. It could be spend to save type initiatives. And again, if you're doing anything like that, you've got to have the stats, you've got to have the case studies, the evidence to back up, not only that you know what needs to be done, but that you understand, how to do it, the results that can be obtained, and you've got appropriate measurement and verification arrangements in place for this as well. So you would be looking as well with this client at how you can work with them, how you can work with their employees. If they're in the public sector, they will have end users or service users, how you could perhaps work with them as well. So, for example, if you'd want to be thinking about the local communities, A lot of these organisations have got very strong links with local stakeholders, so you'd want to be clear at what their involvement would be and how you would potentially work with them as well. That brings me to social value, and social value, of course, since the Social Value Act of 2012, which became law at the beginning of January 2013. So it's nearly been with us for 8 years, and we've certainly seen it assume an increasingly important position within public sector bids for energy and water services. So, what new jobs could be created if you're successful here? What work with community organisations can you do? What pro bono or volunteering activities could you and your people get involved with? So you need to bring this to life and probably tie it to framework or contract spend. So, for each £1 million of spend, for example, what that would mean in terms of jobs, what it would mean in terms of support for local organisations. And don't forget things like work placements, where school pupils can come and maybe work in your business for a week. It could be that college or university students can come and work in your organisation as well, and do that, for a period of time as part of their learning. You might want to be thinking about the government's Kickstart initiative, which is just being launched at the moment for unemployed 16 to 24-year-olds, and see whether your business could participate in that, because obviously youth unemployment is going to be quite a major concern, and if you're able to evidence to the public or even the private sector, if you're doing a private sector proposal here, that you have a plan in place to get assistance from young people and provide them with meaningful career opportunities, then that's something that is also going, as well as being the right thing to do, it's also going to score well within the social value section. So, in terms of getting your bid reviewed, it's important that a number of pairs of eyes within the organisation see it. And maybe look at it from different perspectives. So how good a service is this to the public sector organisation? How good a service is it to the end users who are perhaps affected by the service? How commercially sound is the bid? How environmentally sound is it? What sort of sustainability story is the bid telling? And around the KPIs, the customer commitments, what are you actually committing to? And you want to make these as strong and as believable as you possibly can. And again, if you've got evidence to back them up, usually that would be welcomed within the bid as well. So many organisations get the benefits of external bid specialists coming in. So we can come in to do things like run your bid kickoff session and ensure it's focusing on the correct things to arrive not only at the client hot buttons, but what your USPs and differentiators are, and how we can knit these together to produce compelling win themes. We can be brought in at that stage, we can be brought in to review the bid, or you may wish us to handle the bid end to end, and just being in contact with your subject matter experts to gather information from them. So a lot to think about with bidding to the utilities sector. We've spoken today about the retail bids. We've spoken about it being, bids to the public sector, but all of the points that I've made can equally apply to private sector proposals as well. So what have I got coming up on LinkedIn Live next week? Well, I'm delighted I'm going to be joined by 4 different subject matter experts. So I'm going to be talking about some very specific subjects and how, information from these or awareness of these can be quite important for certain bids that you're involved in. I'm going to be talking to Lucy Butters, who's an expert in cultural intelligence, to Brian McClelland, who's an expert in health and safety. I'm going to be talking to Paul Scofferin, who's expert in equality, diversity and inclusion, and to Yvonne Webb, who's expert in employee engagement people and team development and coaching. So all of these LinkedIn Lives will be taking place at 12 noon, and they run next week on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday and Friday. So I hope to see you there, and hopefully you found this broadcast helpful on winning bids in the utilities sector. Thank you for joining the broadcast or listening to it through the recording.